Good evening, friends, fiends, and spooky supernatural beings. Welcome to A Bit Late. I hope you're having a wonderful spooky time. It's me, A Bit Frank, and I hope you're in the mood for a ghost story. It's a ghost story, there's a ghost, but it was also featured in Cosmopolitan magazine back in the day, so spooky, I'm not sure. But it is certainly a journey, and it's quite unfair too. I don't want to talk too much about it, but how was your day today? Do you need some time to relax? My day was okay. It was an okay day. I got some stuff done. I didn't get everything done, and you know what? I am not going to beat myself up over that. I'm only one person, and I can only do what I can do in a day. And the same goes for you too, my friends and fiends. So, I hope you had a day, and it's a good day now because we're here together. And now that we're finally here, grab a cup of your favorite tea, a blanket, a cat, a dog, or an animal familiar of any kind that you have, and join me for tonight's ghost story, The Lady and the Ghost. It was some moments before the lady became rationally convinced that there was something occurring in the corner of the room, and then the actual nature of the thing was still far from clear. To put it as mildly as possible, she murmured, the thing verges upon the uncanny, and leaning forward upon her silken knees, she attended upon the phenomenon. At first it seemed like some faint and unexplained atmospheric derangements, occasioned apparently neither by an opened window nor by a door. Some papers fluttered to the floor, the fringes of the hanging softly waved. And indeed, it would have been easy to dismiss the matter as the effect of a vagrant draught, had not the state of things suddenly grown unmistakably unusual. All the air of the room, it then appeared, rushed, even with violence to the point, and there underwent what impressed her as an aerial convulsion, in the very midst and wellspring of which, so great was the confusion, there seemed to appear at intervals almost the semblance of a shape. Almost the semblance of a shape. That must be very, very vague indeed. The silence of the room was disturbed by a book that flew open with fluttering leaves, the noise of a vase of violets blown over, from which the perfumed water dripped to the floor, and soft touchings all around as of a breeze passing through a chamber full of trifles. I imagine there's shatterings and smatterings of tinkling high noises. The ringlets of the lady's hair were swept forward towards the corner upon which her gaze was fixed, and in which the conditions had now grown so tense with imminent occurrence, and so rent with some inconceivable throe that she involuntarily rose, and, stepping forward against the pressure of her petticoats, which were blown about her ankles, scandalous, she impatiently thrust her hand into She was immediately aware that another hand had received it, though with a far from substantial envelopement, and for another moment what she saw before her trembled between something and nothing, the shape but not a shape. Then from the precarious situation there slowly emerged into dubious view the shape of a young man dressed in evening clothes, over which was flung a mantle of voluminous folds such as worn by ghosts of fashion. So, a ghost of fashion, you say? This ghost is fashionable, what do non-fashionable ghosts wear? The very deuce was in it, he complained. I thought I should never materialize. She flung herself into a chair, confounded. Yet, even in the shock of the emergency, true to herself, she did not fail to smooth her ruffled locks. Priorities, lady. Her visitor had been scanning his person in a dissatisfied way, even with the fashionable cloak drape thing, and with some vexation he now said, "Beg your pardon, my dear, but my feet are on the floor, or where in thunder are they?" It was with a tone of reassurance that she confessed that his patent leathers were the trivial matter of 2 or 3 inches from the rug, whereupon, with still another effort, he brought himself down until his feet rested decently upon the floor. So he was hovering above the floor and was confused. It was only when he walked about to examine the bric-a-brac that a suspicious lightness was discernible in his tread. When he had composed himself by the survey, effecting it with an air of great insouciance, which, however, failed to conceal the fact that his heart was beating somewhat wildly, he approached the lady. A ghost with romantic nerves, interesting. "Well, here we are again, my love," he cried, and devoured her hands with ghostly kisses. Ooh, wouldn't that be chilly? "It seems an eternity that I've been struggling back to you through the outer void and whatnot. Sometimes I confess I all but despaired. Life is not, I assure you, all skittles and beer for the disembodied." I didn't think that it was. Also, that's a very odd combination. I'm sure he's not talking about the candy, though. Or maybe he is, and then that's a weird combo, right? Right. Anyway, he drew a long breath, and his gaze upon her and the entire chamber seemed to envelope all and cherish it. Little room, and so you are thus, do you know?" he continued with vivacity. "I have wondered about it in the grave, and I could hardly sleep for this place unperturbed. Hi-ho, what a lot of things we leave undone. I dashed this off at the time, the literary passion strong in me thus," and he quotes, "Now when all is done, and I lie so low, I cannot sleep for this, my only care. For though that dim place I could not know, that was where my heart was fain I did not go, nor saw you musing there." Well, these things irk a ghost, so naturally as soon as possible I made my way back to be satisfied that you were still mine. He bent a piercing look upon her. So he was dead, and he has come back to make sure she didn't forget about him, because he couldn't sleep peacefully. "I observe by the calendar on your writing table that some years have elapsed since since I expired," he added with a faint blush. "As you do? It appears that the matter of their dissolution is in conversation, rather kept in the background by well-bred ghosts." Oh, he must be a well-bred ghost then. Wow, what a relief. And whatever that means, right? Hi-ho, how time does fly. You'll be joining me soon, my dear. Ooh, is that a threat? She drew herself splendidly up. Does she not talk in this story? And he was aware of her beauty in the full of its tenacious excellence, of the delicate insolence of life looking upon death, of the fact that she had forgotten him. Ooh, buddy, tough luck. He rose and confronted this, his trembling hands thrust into his pockets, and turned away to hide the dismay of his countenance. I mean, she had to move on, right? That's unfair to expect her to just... Anyway, he was, however, a spook of considerable spirit. I see what you did there. And in a jiffy, he met the occasion. To her blank, indignant gaze, he drew a card from his case and, taking a pencil from the secretary, wrote beneath the name, "Quiet to the breast, whosoever it be, that gave an hour's rest to the heart of me. Quiet to the breast, till it lieth dead, and the heart be clay where I visited. Quiet to the breast, though forgetting quite, to the guest it sheltered once, to the heart's good night." I'm happy he carries business cards with his name on him in his ghostly spectre form. Handing her the card, he bowed and, through force of habit, turned to the door, forgetting that his ghostly pressure would not turn the knob. Ooh, that was almost a mic drop, but he got denied. As the door did not open with a sigh of recollection for his spiritual condition, he prepared to disappear, casting one last look at the faithless lady. But is she, though? She was still looking at the card in her hand, and then tears ran down her face. She has remembered, he reflected. How courteous. For a moment it seemed he could contain his disappointment, discreetly removing himself now at what he felt was the vanishing point, with the customary reticence of the dead. But feeling overcame him. In an instant he had her in his arms and was pouring out his love, his reproaches, the story of his longing, his doubts, his discontentment, and his desperate journey back to the earth for a sight of her. Wow, he really put a lot on her. And, cried he. Picture my agony at finding that you had forgotten, and yet I surmised it in the gloom. I divined it by my restlessness and my despair. Perhaps some lines that occurred to me will suggest the thing to you. You recall my old knack for versification? Another bit of lines, my friends and fiends. Where the grasses weep o'er his darkening bed, and the glowworms creep, lies the weary head of one laid deep, who cannot sleep, the unremembered dead. He took a chair beside her and spoke of their old love for each other, of his fealty through all the transmutations, incidentally of her beauty, of her cruelty, of the light of her face which had illuminated his darksome way to her, and a lot of other things. I wonder what those might be. And the lady bowed her head and wept. This guy's really making her not feel great. A bully from beyond the grave? Oh, not fair. The hours of night passed thus. The moon waned, and a pallor began to tinge the dusky cheek of the east. But the eloquence of the visitor still flowed on, and the lady had his misty hands clasped to her reawakened bosom. What? At last a suspicion of rosiness touched the curtain. He abruptly rose. I cannot hold out against the morning, he said. It is time all good ghosts were in bed. Because he's the epitome of a good ghost. We know he's one of the good ones who dresses in a drape. But I do like that. It's time all good ghosts were in bed. But she threw herself on her knees before him, clasping his eternal waist with a despairing embrace. Oh, do not leave me, she cried, or my love will kill me. She speaks, my. He bent eagerly above her. Say it again. Convince me. I love you, she cried, again and again and again, with such an anguish of sincerity as would convince the most skeptical spook that ever revisited the glimpses of the moon. You will forget again, he said. I shall never forget, she cried. My life will henceforth be one continual remembrance of you, one long act of devotion to your memory, one oblation, one unceasing penitence, one agony of waiting. Oh, please, dear. He lifted her face and saw that it was true. Well, he said, gracefully, wrapping his cloak about him. Well, now I shall have a little peace. Great. He kissed her with a certain jaunty grace upon her hair and prepared to dissolve when he lightly tapped a tattoo upon his leg with the dove-colored gloves he carried. Goodbye, my dear, he said. Henceforth I shall sleep o' nights. My heart is quite at rest. But mine is breaking, she wailed, madly trying once more to clasp his vanishing form. He threw her a kiss from his misty fingertips, and all that remained with her, besides her broken heart, was a faint disturbance of the air. And my friends and fiends, it is now time that all good ghosts were in bed. That is the end of this tale. I think it's completely unfair that this ghostly man-being thing returns to remind a woman who had moved on perfectly fine with her life. I'm assuming that he exists and that they had a love, and then he sort of gets what he wants. Like, oh, she's gonna remember me. I'm no longer an unremembered dead. And then he pops back into the other side and sleeps pretty easily every night now. Where she is probably going to die of a broken heart because he did say she was going to join him soon, remember? Oh boy, I don't know. This was supposed to be a humorous ghost story, but it just kind of seems cruel, doesn't it? But what are some of your thoughts? Have you ever had a ghost appear and sort of, this is a really weird thing to happen, but I don't know. What would you do in this situation? Shame on you, ghost. Shame on you. But those are just some of my thoughts. What are some of yours? And I do hope you're having a wonderful spooky season, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Now off to sleep and dream what you will, or stay a while and enjoy another tale. Whichever you choose, I'll speak to you again, and until then, stay spooky, my friend. Good night.